modern technologies and modern ways of thinking. The Sufis just inhabited a sort of total way of life, but now the modern Salafis understand religion as a system among systems, and so on and so forth. You get this sort of epistemic break. But the Sufis act very much like the Salafis, as do the Salafis act very much like the Sufis in many respects. And that sort of thing gets edited out. But I think the work of literacy is one, that sort of critique of the hard case of literacy really offers a way out of that.
Well, I think another point you can make there is part of Nigeria at the time, in the Qur'anic schools, the acquisition of literacy was tied to oral recitation very closely. And the Western schools also breaking it down because the book functioned in a different way in the Western schools. Yes. So again, there were competing literacies in Nigeria, apart from this tension between radio diffusion.
Your first encounter with the Quran is a recitation. And when you're told the letters of Arabic, you're not told the Arabic letters, you're told house of descriptive letters of the Arabic. So it's the word that looks like a chair with a broken back, or something like that, to describe an Arabic letter. So in a sense, you do not learn meaning at all. You learn the signifier of the signifier. And so that's why for so long you encountered a signifier, which in northern Nigeria are still all sorts of magical uses of the Quran, from chanting around the house to offer protection, from eating when you would write on an aloe board, wash it off and drink the calabash to heal yourself, to the use of amulets where you would write things down or take printed things, fold them up with bits of other stuff and sew them in leather. All these things, these are sort of disciplines whereby, for the technicist theory of media theory, it's like viciously anti-semantics in some sense. It is about the operation of the technology, and content doesn't count. But when you're dealing with something like the Quran, it's so powerful, it's ridiculous to try and treat it as not mediating in and of itself, not exerting its own force in these situations. And so that how you engage with signifiers in those different media forms is absolutely key.
Awesome question. I'm just wondering if part of the anxieties that you're talking about, wondering if a factor in that might have been an assumption or maybe worry about radio being a form of entertainment in some sort of way, or just that concept of entertainment maybe influenced by the circulation of movies or that sort of technology around the same time as the establishment of the radio system, and whether entertainment is a component of those anxieties.
Yeah, I mean, in the factor I didn't go into, which was in the narrative, then Abdullahi refuses the radio, he dies, his son takes over Sanusi, the radio comes in, and then in 54 the Quranic broadcasts get banned. Radio opens and closes with Christian prayers and Quranic broadcasts. So there, in this case, the space is the sort of dispersal of space from the sort of rooted space of the mosque through to the dispersed space of the open city. But the radio creates the space of the radio itself. And so when, again, this interview in Syria Kabar, this very major culinary ship, he would say, well, the problem was at the time, it came on after Gobi music, and it did. It's like went back to the sort of radio listings. And so it would come up after Gobi and Garaya music, which are instruments used in possession. So in traditional possession, it's the instruments that call down the spirits. So this is completely against Islam. So now there's a space that the Quran is in differentially, which is precisely after, it's coming before sports talk and after Gogi music. It's coming this, so that space of the sort of transmission itself creates a new space, which Kabara said was one of the problems of it. And in the fatwa that against it, which was in the time from Zaria, he also refers to that the Quran's being put into places it shouldn't be. And so I think that we have to think on these different levels. And this is again when how do you define it? Is it the same thing as the Quran? Many people do see it. It still is an extensive theory of media. If I talk to people in Nigeria and they broadcast from the minarets, in the sense, implicitly, it's the same thing that's going out there. But of course it's not. To be remediated absolutely changes that, which is put into all sorts of new conditions. And entertainment would be one of them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As far as the relation between religion and media is concerned generally, I think there's two sources that might really shed light on that relation. One of those two sources is Bergson's two sources of religion and media, of religion and morality, where he says famously that the universe is a machine for the making of the gods. sources is, which would clarify what kind of machine we're talking about, is Derrida's faith and knowledge, religion, the two sources of religion at the limits of reason alone. And another essay by Derrida called Above All No Journalists. And in these Derrida does exactly, I think, the kind of thing that speaks directly to your problem, which is he links, not only does he not separate religion from media, but he understands media, contemporary media, as affecting a dissemination and a proliferation of the religious in ways now that have been completely, that is completely different in kind from the kinds of disseminations you might get through writing in the classical sense of that term. And so far from separating the two, he speaks of what he calls the religion of media. What we get in that text is essentially the inseparability of media and religion completely. They completely become overlapping. And the disseminative effects of the media, what we call it televangelism, for example, a classic example, are really kind of thematized in a way that I think speaks directly to what you're saying.
It's a great point. I mean, somewhere in the paper earlier on, I was saying there are different lineages we could use to think about this. And I think that's proved to be a powerful one, partly because Hint of Greece is such an engine of publishing stuff on the same topic, very much in that mode, which is, well, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, in this sense, I was just trying to go to this other, I mean, it's heuristic, but there is this, if one, because I do work in media theory or outside of religion, so then if one explores how one thinks about the materiality of the technology, which is an interest of mine, we're then led into this sort of lineage, and it's just, I actually want to examine that as well, and I want to do more work on it, partly because at some point I would have to then relate to exactly sort of what I've been doing, because it's not as if people don't understand that we're working on it. But then I'm interested in the fact that these understandings still exist with these other understandings, where if you talk to people in media theory, it's like it's an interruption to bring religion into it. It's an interruption. So the Hitler approach that works on would be, what are the conditions of possibility where he begins to use machines to figure to understand the universe, or understand religion. Why is it that this came about at this particular point? And the media, he would argue, was structuring a priori to create the possibility of that thought in some sense. So it's always retreating to the technical conditions of the media itself that produce these sort of things. But I would argue we can't understand the technology without understanding some of those religious preconditions that ought to become part of this reciprocal exchange, out of which media emerge. And there is this way in which, even though for Benjamin, who's like deeply messianic, but then has these deeply structural secular thoughts at the same time, you see these really sort of odd inconsistencies.